Hello, and thank you for joining Growing Tech Fast, the condensed Org3D podcast, where we talk about growing tech startups with those who have grown them. Today, I am joined by Neil, co-founder of Classwallet. It's really great to have you on the podcast today, Neil. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Lauren.
No worries. It's absolutely fantastic to have you on. Neil, for the benefit of our listeners, can you tell me a little bit more about who you are and your mission with the work you're doing?
Okay, sure, thanks. So I'm Neil Steinhardt. I'm the president and co-founder of Classwallet, and we are a digital wallet solution that solves an accounts payable problem for public entities. So basically, we've created technology that helps businesses that are managing public dollars track how funds are spent. And it's really been the culmination of a lifelong of experiences at all different companies doing all different things.
No, definitely so. So tell me, where did the idea of Classwallet originally come from? What kickstarted this journey?
It's a great question. So my partner, Jamie Rosenberg, was the founder of Adopt a Classroom. And that was one of the earliest crowdfunding platforms in the world. And it still continues to this day. It's a really interesting and large nonprofit. They raise money for about 30% of the teachers in America. And the idea was that the donors could donate to teachers and see how the money was spent. And so Classwallet kind of grew out of that nonprofit to be like the for-profit version. So he actually, created Classwallet, was up with Techstars at an accelerator in New York, and I was introduced to him by one of his advisors. And I had been working at Skrill USA, a big digital wallet operator. And we started talking, and I was actually transitioning to go work for a bank. and Jamie made me an offer and said, "Hey, what do you think about joining this startup in Florida?" And I was like, "Wow, that's a really interesting opportunity. I think I can always work for a bank, but I'm curious what's going on at Classwallet."
No, 100%. And, aren't you thankful you did? Thankful you made the move over?
Oh, absolutely. But I will say, I was based in New York, and this was based in Miami. So I spent a year kind of commuting. I wasn't really fully committed to move my family down to South Florida. That was a pretty big change. So we spent a year kind of working on the company and the product and raising some money. And after a year, I said, "No, let's all move down here and give it a go." And it's been working out pretty well.
Definitely. Now, like I say, you've been in the Paytech space for a while now, nearly 25 years, if I'm right.
Yes.
So tell me a bit about your time in the space.
Sure. So I got my start as a creative at an advertising agency in New York. And, I started out as a copywriter, became a producer and director. And I used to make television commercials and industrial videos and radio spots. And after a while, it got a little boring. There are creative days that are very exciting, but there are a lot of days that really aren't so exciting. So I went back to get an MBA and maybe change careers in my late 20s. And, I fell in with a tech startup that was doing licensed money transmission. So, so I became a product manager over there. And then, I've been a payment facilitator for Vantiv Bank. I've been a prepaid card program manager at, a couple different banks. So I've kind of run the gamut of payments and actually fell in with a European company, Austrian company called Paytech, and helped them, get their business up and running in the US. We got acquired by Skrill, big digital wallet operator, and that led me to Classwallet.
Brilliant. So obviously Paytech is such a really big part of our lives. It's, involved in pretty much every aspect of our day-to-day life. Why do you think it's so important in the education market?
So it's an interesting question. There's a gap in the market, so we work with, public school districts, we work with state education agencies who are allocating money and need to track how it's spent, right? Because they're public dollars, it's tax dollars, right? So the accountability is high. And there aren't that many solutions in the market, right? They have like big centralized solutions like their ERP, they issue purchase orders, and then they maybe have purchase cards. They only want to give them to certain employees. And there's a big gap between those two solutions that we're filling with the digital wallet technology. And that's really the big innovation.
Definitely so. And how do you think it's going to grow from here?
We're just starting to scratch the surface. We work with 150 public school districts. We have 13 state contracts. There's a lot of opportunity. There's probably some interesting opportunity outside of education as well. But there's the innovation in payments is really fascinating, right? Because we have all these new technologies, and it takes a while to get adopted, and it's a long time to abandon the previous technologies. Like you might even have some coins and paper in your purse, right? And they've been around for thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
But you also might make some peer-to-peer payments with your mobile as well, right? So, we kind of look at Classwallet technology as really an enterprise-grade digital wallet, and you just don't see that use case too often today. But we think there's a big opportunity for it going forward.
Definitely so. Now, I think it can really be argued, and I think you'll really agree with me on this, that digital wallets are really the future of Paytech. Do you think there's any markets kind of out there that could really benefit from the use of digital wallets that don't currently use them?
Well, that hits on exactly what we're doing, right? We don't see a lot in government, right? And we don't see a lot of it in the public sector, although they're all using it in their everyday lives, right? So it's not like you have to convince somebody like, hey, I think a digital wallet's a great solution. And they're like, no, we don't want to use it. I'm like, well, how'd you pay your babysitter, right? How did you pay for your Uber? How did you pay, right? Like everybody's using it, right? But you're not seeing this application at an enterprise level. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity because the technology is so amazing, and creates so many opportunities for control and transparency, and that's really significant in the public sector.
No, 100%. I definitely think the opportunity is pretty much endless. With digital wallets, there's so many places it can be applied.
Oh yeah, and it's funny because we keep hearing, oh, you should be talking to the health and human services, and you should be talking for this relief and that. And we're like, yeah, but we're a small company, and we're kind of focused and trying to win the game that we're running. But there's certainly a lot more opportunity out there.
Definitely so. Now, you started Classwallet back in 2014, am I right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so looking back at everything now from how things have progressed, what do you think you'd do differently if you did it all again?
To do differently? I don't know that I would do so much differently. I might do more, when we started, and we still are like lean startup aficionados, right? So you want to iterate fast, get your product into market, get real feedback, fail fast. My partner always says, like, if we're not failing, we're failing. So don't be shy. And we've always been pretty capitally efficient. We're a venture-backed startup. So, we've raised about $9 million to date. So, we can't just keep spending as maybe we would want to build out the teams that we want to have. So we have to kind of move forward at a measured pace. So, the journey was interesting because we went from teachers to B2B to education foundations to school districts to states. And maybe I would have been a little less shy about spending some of the money. I think we've been really good about kind of staying focused and staying on point. But that founder's journey, there's a lot of horror stories about running out of capital and not being able to survive. And we made it long enough and pivoted enough to thrive, and that's really rewarding.
Yeah, definitely so. And I suppose, following on from that, what do you think the best part has been from kind of growing Classwallet?
Maybe the validation. We don't really need an attaboy or a pat on the back, but we've always been believers, right? And when you go out there and you're raising money and, 9 out of 10 people tell you that you're off base, right? And you just got to find that one person or maybe 1 out of 100 that believes in you. So we don't need to prove anybody wrong, but just to say, hey, look, we're the guys that figured it out, and we're executing and moving forward. And now that I think we're 90 employees, it's very gratifying to have an impact on people's lives and know that 90 families are being supported, and that's a different kind of responsibility, right? To feel that, hey, we got through a pandemic and we're thriving and we're doing okay, and people are counting on us to continue to thrive, and that's an interesting burden that we didn't have when we were 5 people that wore a lot of hats and just tried to get everything done, like any other tech startup. So it's interesting.
Definitely so. And I think it's really nice what you say about kind of doing good and giving back into the community. It's nice to see that application of tech into helping those families and helping the different kind of state services.
Oh my gosh. When you think about the users, the teachers, we get so much positive feedback, because we give them some autonomy to get resources in their classroom, and it's always a horror story, right, across the country. We work with a lot of special needs families that are getting, funding from the state. So the act of empowering all these people to be able to get resources that they need, is super rewarding. And when we worked at Skrill, which is a big successful digital wallet company that has a big focus in online gaming, it's not the same reward, right? Yeah. It's like, hey, we got somebody a deposit bonus at party poker, like, great. Even though they're very appreciative as well, right?
Yeah.
But there is an aspect of what we're doing that's very enabling. We've done a couple of programs this year, creating emergency relief for families due to COVID in the state of Oklahoma, in Idaho, that wouldn't have existed for our technology. But for Classwallet, they would not have been able to deploy the money and track how it's spent and be fiscally responsible. And so that kind of enablement is really just mind-blowing when you take a step back and think about where we started and now where we're at.
Yeah, 100%. Like you say, I think it's a really good sense of achievement, and to be able to say that you are giving back and to say that you are helping. Now, I'd really love to touch a little bit on kind of the pandemic. What do you think was the biggest struggle of pushing Classwallet forward and building Classwallet through the pandemic?
Sure. So, when the pandemic hit, we were very afraid, right? Because, our bread and butter is teachers, and schools were closing and teachers were being sent home. And we said, oh my God, this could be really disastrous. And it turns out that it was a great way to get resources to teachers who weren't coming into the buildings any longer. And a lot of our customers were like, hey, maybe we could put more money on the platform, right? Because we really need to help these teachers out, right? Because now they're setting up remote offices and things like that. There's been a ton of grant money that's been coming out of Washington to states that needs to be managed with a platform like ours, right? What we've built is actually very flexible and dynamic, and able to accommodate, a lot of the needs that are out there, right? Because a lot of times the idea of giving money from Washington to the state to, a non-public school or to a family is a great idea, but the execution is really challenging, right? So, how does a state education agency that works with public schools fund non-public schools? Right? And some states can do it, but a lot of states are like, we don't have a method, but we have a turnkey solution that can enable them. Or, we had one state, we had discussions and said, hey, we get this money that has to go to families. And we said, well, okay, that's great. We're like, how are you going to verify families? They're like, what do you mean? Like, are you going to allow Canadians to apply? Are you going to allow, people out of state to apply? Like, how do you keep control of that? They're like, oh, wow, we need to really think that through. Like, well, we have a partner that can help you do the verification process, and we were able to stand up that program in 6 weeks, right? From a contract to getting people on the platform to getting them funded to tracking how they spend. And it really is amazing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, essentially, Classwallet just seems to overcome all these problems, kind of dealing with the middleman.
Exactly. And it's very configurable. So we've got an online marketplace where we've got all these e-commerce vendors, Amazon, Staples, Office Depot integrated with us. We accept Classwallet as a form of payment. We can onboard vendors for payments, really easily. It takes a day. We get them linked up and in the program. We have debit cards which we also have reimbursement. They can link their bank accounts and submit their receipts. So it's that suite of tools that enables them to customize a program that really works for them.
No, definitely so. And like you say, it's just such a great product and such a great thing to kind of solve all these problems that I don't think people realize were problems.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. And we do like to get out there. We don't come from government, right? So, it's really fascinating to kind of learn this process and to understand, how these really hardworking people, they pass a law and the execution is left up to a bunch of people, and they say, hey, this there's no blueprint about how to do that. Yeah. And so we come in and we're very consultative. We win a lot of business. We don't get all the business that we pitch. And we say, hey, we'd like to share with you our experience and our perspective, because we do this in 13 states. And, here's some of the pitfalls, and here's some of the opportunity, and here's some things that people have done really well. And here's some things that, probably haven't been executed as well as they can be. And, then we'll help figure it out, and we'll be consultative partners. And I think that's very warmly received. Because we're not just a technology service provider, but we really do view ourselves as partners.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a really important thing with a lot of tech startups at the minute, is having that relationship and, really building that kind of trust with people. Now, kind of over your personal journey, let's say, do you think there's been any kind of significant changes in your personal development over the last 25 years or so?
Oh gosh, yeah. 25 years, geez, I'm a different person. But no, it's fascinating, right? Because you always have to be growing, and you always have to be reflective, and you always have to, think, can we do things better? So, one time I had a professional 360. I got my start as a creative at an ad agency, and I think I communicate quite well. And when you went through this whole process, it was like, my weakest link was communication. And I'm like, wow, I got to take a pretty hard look in the mirror and try to figure out what's going on here. So now I'd like to be a lot more clear about expectations and guidance. And, I try to end every meeting with, okay, how can I help you? I'm at a stage in my career professionally where, I think the things that I can do best is to empower people to do their job and remove the obstacles from their way. And so, you start out as a doer, and then you take on a little bit more responsibility. And, that journey is an interesting journey, right? Because, I want to get the most out of people, and I want to hire the best people and give them the opportunity to shine and really, do the best work that they can do. And that all accrues to our benefit, so there's really no ego there.
No, 100%. What do you think kind of some of the, best bits of advice are that you've been given that you would pass on to people that you are now coaching?
So, I love Jamie's expression of, if you're not failing, you're failing. And, I'm always like, why? Like, how do we get to a win, right? Like, what are the obstacles? We've sat around in lots of rooms with lots of whiteboards, trying to solve what seem to be intractable problems. And nothing's intractable. It might take too much time, or it might take too much money. You might want to take a pass on it. But, the better question is, hey, how can we abstract this one more layer? How can we look at this a little broader? I think at ClassWallet, what we do, there's a fair amount of complexity, right? Yeah. But at the same time, what we do is really simple, right? We're a prepaid digital wallet. Customers put money on, their users spend it, and we report it back to our customers, right? Like, that's really simple and easy to explain, right? Now, the little nuance about how many journal entries does every transaction, kick off in the ERP, and, how do we settle all these transactions and everything else? Yeah, it gets to be quite complex. But I think as I've grown as a manager and a human being, is to say, hey, look, it's not as complex, and let's get out of the weeds. Let's try to understand, at a really simple level, if we can make it work. And then we can keep diving in and refining it and get more into the nitty gritty and the details. And I think that approach, took a long time to get to, right? And a lot of trial and error. But, you want to be complex, and you want to figure this out, and you solve all these great problems. And it's not really as hard as you think.
No, definitely. Do you think you find yourself applying that to your normal day-to-day life now?
All the time. I think there's a lot of pressure, and as we become more successful, there's even more pressure, right? There's 90 families that depend on you for a living, and there are all these government contracts and everything else. But at the same time, sleep pretty well. And, Classwallet is an amazing company for work-life balance. We're all family people. We all understand the pressures. The pandemic has been interesting to see how we could really embrace remote working, and take advantage. So, I raise some children, and when people ask me like, hey, I need to cut out early because I need to see a soccer game, or I need to go to a school play, I'm like, those moments are irreplaceable. Like, how could you in clear conscience be like, no, you got to get your work done, stay here and skip that, So I think, I'm much more tolerant as a manager. And also, I have an amazing team of people, because I think, talent attracts talent. So they're all hardworking, and they all get their stuff done. And, if they have to do something at night, so that they can take the afternoon off, like, they're all responsible people.
Definitely. And I think that's a really kind of important part of culture these days. And I think COVID's definitely, kind of spearheaded that to, make that culture of, as long as you kind of get your work done, we're really happy to help you out in other places.
Oh, absolutely. Culture is the most important thing at Classwallet, and it's not supposed to be a slogan on a break room wall, right? So we need to live it every day to prove it. And there's a couple of things that we do that reinforces it for the employees. And, we have an unlimited vacation policy. We have a weekly win gratitude meeting where people share, their wins and the things that they're grateful for. And so, like I said, it's not sloganeering. It's really to say, hey, look, this is the way we really feel. This is the kind of company we want to build, and then we have to live it every day and prove it.
Amazing. So, lastly, what do you think the future of Classwallet looks like?
Bigger, bolder, sleeker. I got a pretty crappy crystal ball. I wish I knew more. But I think one of the stages that we're at, which is challenging, but I'm trying to learn how to embrace, is this, as we grow and specialize and build out the team and get more specialists and allow people to really excel in their lane. We've been on a 2-year journey to say, hey, we want to be accommodating scale, right? We want to do all the things that are necessary to be a big functioning fintech company. And even when it means, doing some things that, might seem a little premature. And I think by putting all those pieces in place, the future is really, really bright. And I think there's a lot of, amazing opportunity for Classwallet, maybe outside of education, or there's a lot more in education, right? So, so for me, it's really exciting to say, like, my day's never the same day twice, right? And there's so much opportunity that's coming and inbound that, I think we have enough resource to go out and execute and do amazing things and continue to help teachers and families, and maybe in slightly different ways than we do today.
Amazing. No, I think we can both agree the kind of future is looking really exciting, and like you say, kind of looking to grow into one of these established fintech companies that we all know, a nice household name.
Exactly. Whenever we talk about Classwallet, they talk about crypto.
I'll have known you first.
Exactly.
Amazing. So it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today, obviously hearing your story, getting some of your wisdom, and that is all we have time for. So thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
All right, thanks, Laura. It was my pleasure.
Brilliant stuff. And thank you to everyone listening. Tune in next time for Growing Tech Fast.